Hi, the Sci-Fi Recapped here. Today, I am going to explain the American science fiction action film called Planet Terror. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Over the opening credits, Cherry Darling works as a go-go dancer at a club. After crying on stage, she tells her boss Skip that she needs to make a real change in her life and quits her job. While walking home, several military trucks pass her close enough that she throws herself into a bunch of trash cans. She also gets several splinters in her thigh for her trouble. At the military base a couple of miles away from town, scientist Abby is threatening his incompetent employee Romy for having lost 3 very valuable specimens. The price of failure is Abby's henchman cutting off Romy's testicles. Lieutenant Muldoon shows up, wearing a gas mask. He asks Abby where the shit is, and Abby says that it's all there on the base, prompting a short gunfight. His men are shot to death by Muldoon's troops, and he again asks where the mysterious shit is. Muldoon's face starts to boil and Abby says that it's all around them, while Abby escapes in a vehicle, not noticing one of Muldoon's soldiers is riding on top of the vehicle. The green mist spreads through the air. Meanwhile, Cherry stops at a rundown barbecue restaurant called the Bone Shack. A young woman named Tammy arrives and asks the owner JT for some water for her car's overheated engine. After Tammy drives away, Ray, a local mechanic, arrives in his truck. Then Ray sits at Cherry's table and the two converse, revealing Ray and Cherry have a history together. In the hospital where Bill and Dakota work, people with strange symptoms start arriving. The first one, Joe, has a bite supposedly half an hour old with an advanced stage of gangrene and bacterial infection. Dr. Felix notes he has seen similar wounds before in Iraq soldiers, due to mustard gas. Joe's temperature is high, and when Block makes Joe open his mouth he is startled that his tongue is infected as well. Block squeezes a boil, making it burst and blood and fluid spurt onto his face. The infection on Joe's arm is spreading, so he calls in Dakota and tells Joe that he's going to amputate his arm. Dakota has 3 needles and injects Joe with all of them, making him pass out. When Ray and Cherry see infected people dragging Tammy's body, but they think that it's just a dead deer, Ray says that it's best to run right through a deer if it's in front of you, because trying to swerve might cause you to crash. He is immediately startled by a sicko in the road and swerves, losing control of his truck. The truck rolls over until it's upside down, and Cherry gets after him for swerving. He replies that it wasn't just a deer in the road. Sickos suddenly grab Cherry and take her to the woods. Ray grabs a rifle and runs after her. By the time Ray catches up with them, the sickos have ripped off Cherry's right leg and have run off with it. Ray shoots the sickos, but they don't die. He puts Cherry in his truck and speeds off to the hospital. At the hospital, Cherry is barely awake when admitted. While Dr. Block asks Ray what happened, Sheriff Haig arrives with Deputy Carlos and Deputy Tolo. Haig is startled to see Ray due to an unexplained secret in his past and asks why he's carrying a rifle. Haig arrests him as more sick people show up. Block calls Dakota over and shows her Tammy's corpse, which also arrives. A doctor calls her a no-brainer, since she's missing the back of her head and her brain. Dakota gets upset and cries in a room while Block follows her. He knows that Tammy and Dakota used to have a lesbian relationship, and that they were going to run off that night. Block grabs one of Dakota's needles and stabs her hands with it, causing her hands to become numb. Before he can kill her, Block is called away by another doctor, but he first locks Dakota in the room. At the police station, Ray is permitted to make one phone call where he has a coded conversation with someone on the other end. Ray asks about something called DC-2, and asks more coded questions. Earl McGraw, a local Texas Ranger, talks with Ray over his troubles, and leaves for home to care for his sick wife who's dying from lung cancer. Sheriff Haig keeps asking Ray who he really is when he gets a call from his brother JT, who complains that there are 2 people loitering in front of his restaurant who aren't customers. People are sickos, and they presumably attacked JT. Back with the sheriff, Deputy Tolo arrives angry about some maniac that he arrested at Skip's club that bit off his finger. When the cops go outside to investigate, they see that the sicko has escaped from Tolo's cop car. Carlos finds Tolo's ring on the ground, but no finger. As he gives Tolo his ring back, Carlos is bitten on the arm and attacked by sickos. Before they react, Carlos is gruesomely torn apart and eaten by his attackers. Haig and Tolo shoot the sickos, but more show up. Haig and Tolo fight them off as Ray stays inside the station. Tolo is thrown hard against a car, but lives. Ray breaks free from his handcuffs after saving Haig's life, and tells him that he's going to the hospital to get Cherry. Haig tells him that they'll take his car, Haig's car explodes, and so the remaining cops get into the back of Ray's truck and head towards the hospital. At the home of Earl McGraw, he feeds his virtually catatonic cancer-stricken wife some soup. He looks away for a second, and when he looks back she's turned into a sicko. She attacks him almost instantly. Back at the hospital, more and more people are coming in with boils and infections. Dr. Felix and Dr. Block are unable to comprehend what's happening. As Dr. Block walks down a hallway, he looks into a room where Joe has turned into a sicko and walks towards him with a surgical saw. Joe cuts Block's glasses, but the saw shuts off when he walks too far away from the outlet, pulling out the plug. Instead, Joe bursts a boil on his face and smears his blood all over Block's face, infecting him. Also, Cherry wakes up in a hospital room, and is depressed over her severed leg. Ray enters the hospital and finds total mayhem has taken over. The infected corpses and injured are chasing and attacking both doctors and patients, ripping them apart and eating them. With his 2 butterfly knives, Ray, like a professional fighter, charges into the carnage, brutally stabbing, slashing, slicing and dicing all the sickos in his path. He eventually makes it to Cherry's room, where she's hiding under a sheet playing dead. While Dakota and her son, Tony, are in their car, the crazy babysitter twins attack them with shovels and smash the windshield. She speeds off, causing one of the twins to land hard on the ground. Dakota drives to Earl McGraw's house, and gives her son a pistol. She tells him that if anyone other than her comes to the car, he must shoot them in the head like in his video games. He asks what if it's Dad, and she tells him especially if it's him. Before she leaves, Dakota tells him to be careful or he'll shoot his own face off. As Dakota walks to the house, she hears a gunshot. She runs to the car to find that her son accidentally shot himself in the head. Her grief is interrupted by Block showing up, having turned into a sicko. He holds her by the hair, but she rips herself away from him, grabs her dead son, and knocks on the front door. Ray and Cherry meet up with Sheriff Haig at JT's restaurant with other survivors from the town, where the sheriff makes them deputies, and they make their way up a hill to JT's. When they get there, they see JT lying down on the floor behind the counter, allegedly with his intestines ripped out. Upon further inspection though, it turns out JT was merely unconscious with some barbecued sausages on his stomach, having killed all the sickos by shooting them in the head. Ray tries the sausage, and says that it is the best he's ever had. JT tastes the sauce and agrees. His brother, the sheriff, points out that he's bleeding from the temple and it's probably his own blood that's given the sauce the perfect flavor. Afterward, JT shows the group some of his escape vehicles, one of which is a chopper motorcycle, while the other is cut and chopped 1950s convertible automobile. Sheriff Haig continues to ask Ray who his really is, but Ray refuses to answer. Near the military base, they are blocked by a wall of sicko zombies on a bridge, which are killed by a bunch of soldiers coming up from behind. They are Muldoon and his men. Muldoon knows who Ray is, and has his men knock him out. When Ray wakes up, he finds himself locked up with the other survivors in the military base. We find out El Ray is actually a war veteran. The soldiers take survivors as prisoners. Abby reveals to Ray and the others that he is the scientist and businessman who has sold the virus DC-2 to the soldiers. They are infected, but can use the gas itself to control the symptoms. 2 of the militants grab Cherry and Dakota. Ray tries to help, but is beaten up. On the elevator ride down, the lecherous soldier stops the elevator and takes off his gas mask. He threatens Cherry with his pistol while his face starts to boil. The other military guy tells him to put his mask back on, and when he does, his face becomes normal again. Back in the cell, JT rambles on about the barbecue sauce recipe. To distract the guards' attention, El Ray, JT, and a sax-playing prisoner overpower the guards, but JT is shot. El Ray and Abby break out and find Lieutenant Muldoon, who explains what it is actually happening. Lieutenant Muldoon and his soldiers were in Afghanistan. They'd accidentally found and killed Osama bin Laden. But as this was against America's interest, so instead of medals they got gassed with DC-2, a chemical weapon designed to wipe out entire cities. He figured that the best way to find a cure was to gas a whole town, then take the survivors to extract a cure from them. While he talks, he has not been wearing his gas mask, so he swells and blisters and finally is shot and killed by El Ray. Meanwhile, the rapist soldier tells Cherry to dance on her wooden leg, and takes off his gas mask. While she dances, Cherry hits him in the head with her wooden leg, splintering it to a sharp point, which she then stabs him in the eye with. Furious, he drops his pants, and we see his crotch turn to mush melt away. Cherry is horrified and backs away. Dakota, finally getting some feeling back into her hands, shoots a dart-like needle in his other eye. Abby and El Ray arrive and shoot the rapist and his partner. They all go back to fetch the others. Sheriff Haig and JT are both near death from their gunshot wounds, so they are left behind, in control of a bomb. El Rey sticks a specially crafted custom-made M4A1 carbine assault rifle into Cherry's stump. She uses it to open the door to the command center, shooting a grenade through the rapist, whose condition has worsened severely. She shoots all the men in the command center with the rifle. The survivors force their way through the dying soldiers to a couple of helicopters using Cherry's new leg and their own guns. The fatally wounded JT and Sheriff Haig volunteer to stay behind and blow up the stash of DC-2 canisters with a remote-controlled detonate that El Rey gives to JT. After the survivors file out of the building, and engage in a gunfight with the soldiers outside, whom are starting to transform into sickos, JT finally tells Haig the secret to his rib recipe, then blows up the military base. Storming the helicopters, Abby gets killed and Dakota is attacked by Dr. Block in zombie state. Her father, Earl McGraw, suddenly appears and kills him during the final battle. Cherry launches herself off the ground with her grenade launcher and blows up a bunch of sickos midair. When she lands, she spins around and blasts them away. The survivors make it behind the walls and fight the sickos. One of them shoots a rocket at Cherry, but she dodges it and blows him up. All looks well, and Cherry watches the base burn, but doesn't notice a sicko soldier behind her. Ray and the soldier unload into each other, and Cherry runs to the dying Ray. Everyone gets into the helicopter and Skip flies it, but not before he cuts through a group of sickos with the helicopter's rotary blades. The crazy babysitter twins laugh with glee over the bloodbath and enjoy taking pot shots themselves at the sickos on the ground, while one gets into the co-pilot's seat and turns on the helicopter's windshield wipers to wash the blood splattered on the front windows. El Rey tells Cherry to go to the ocean, turn her back to the sea, and fight. Cherry pleads with him, asking him not to forget his promise of 2 against the world. He says that the promise is still good, as he has made her pregnant. Ray dies, and Cherry grabs onto a lowered rope from the helicopter as it flies away. Cut to Mexico 1 year later. Cherry tells us via voiceover that she's found other survivors, and that they took Ray's advice and settled down near the ocean in a remote part of Mexico. On the beach, Skip is enjoying this new lifestyle with the crazy babysitter twins by his side, with several armed survivors, including Dakota, patrolling the area for sickos. A sicko pops out to attack a small child in the crowd of survivors when Cherry blasts him away with her new chain machine gun attached to her leg. The final shot shows Cherry and her baby daughter, the product from her brief period of sex with El Rey, being happy, 2 against the world.